Tom had always enjoyed living in Pine Ridge Estates. The quiet streets, the friendly neighbors, and the occasional community barbecue made it feel like home. But lately, something had started to sour the peaceful vibe of the neighborhood. It all began when the mailman dropped off an envelope with bold letters that made Tom's stomach tighten. Pine Ridge HOA Statement of Charges. Tom sat at his kitchen table, opening the envelope with cautious curiosity. Inside was a bill, one that made no sense. Charges for landscaping he never requested, fees for community improvements that hadn't happened, and a mysterious administrative penalty that felt more like a punishment than a fine. The total amount, well over $1,200. Tom scratched his head. This can't be right, he muttered. I didn't approve any of this. He flipped through the enclosed documents, trying to find an explanation. The bill came with a note from Karen Prescott, the HOA president, a woman known around the neighborhood for her strict rules and no-nonsense attitude. Karen's signature was scrawled at the bottom, but the tone of the letter was anything but friendly. Failure to pay this bill within 30 days will result in immediate legal action and possible fines. The note warned. Tom frowned. He wasn't the type to ignore his responsibilities. But this felt like a trap, and if there was one thing he'd learned about HOA politics, it was that sometimes they played by their own rules. The next day, Tom stopped by the community center, hoping to talk to the HOA board members in person. Unfortunately, he quickly found out that meetings were tightly controlled, and Karen seemed to have all the power. Every time Tom tried to raise questions, he was met with vague answers or outright dismissals. Word traveled fast in small neighborhoods, and soon, a few neighbors approached Tom with sympathetic but cautious smiles. You've been dealing with Karen, huh? One said, lowering her voice. Good luck. She's ruthless. Tom felt a mix of frustration and unease. Why was Karen so fixated on him? He wasn't the only one confused by the bills, but somehow he seemed to be the target, determined not to be bullied. Tom did what many homeowners did. He refused to pay the questionable charges. Instead, he sent a polite letter to the HOA requesting an itemized breakdown and proof of the charges. Days passed, but the silence was deafening. Then came the letter. This time, it wasn't polite. Your refusal to pay is a violation of HOA policies and community standards, Karen wrote. Further, delay will force us to pursue legal remedies, including, but not limited to fines, liens on your property, and legal action. Tom leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. This is getting out of hand, he muttered. That night, as he scrolled through online forums about HOA disputes, he found countless stories just like his neighbors caught in battles with overbearing boards, stories of fees that seemed like extortion, and even cases where people lost their homes over HOA conflicts. Tom felt a chill. I don't want to be another cautionary tale, he thought, but I can't just give in. Meanwhile, Karen's position grew stronger. She had the board's ear and seemed determined to make an example out of Tom. A quiet war was brewing, one that would soon erupt in ways no one expected. Just then, Tom's phone buzzed. It was a text from a neighbor. Be careful. Karen's making moves. Heard she's talking to the cops. Tom stared at the message, heart pounding. Was this about the bills? Was Karen planning something more drastic? As the sun set over Pine Ridge Estates, Tom realized that his fight was no longer just about unfair fees. It was personal, and it was about to get a lot more complicated. If you've ever felt trapped by an HOA, or know someone who has, make sure you subscribe and stay with us. This story is just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The Next morning, Tom woke up with a knot in his stomach. That text about Karen talking to the cops wasn't just idle gossip. Something was brewing beneath the calm surface of Pine Ridge Estates, and Tom could feel the tension tightening like a noose. He made his way to the mailbox, hoping for a response from the HOA to his request for clarification on the bill. Instead, there was another letter waiting. This one heavier, more official looking. The return address was Pine Ridge, but the tone inside was anything but neighborly. Tom carefully opened the envelope and pulled out a crisp letter stamped urgent. The words hit him like a slap. "Dear Mr. Harris," it began, "your continued refusal to pay the outstanding balance of $1,245.67 is a direct violation of the Pine Ridge Estates Community Guidelines and will not be tolerated." The letter went on, laying out threats of legal action, fines, and even a warning that his refusal could be reported to local authorities as a potential disturbance to community peace. Tom blinked in disbelief. "Reported to authorities, over, and paid bills." He scrolled down to the signature Karen Prescott, HOA president. For a moment, he wondered if this was some kind of prank. But Karen's reputation was well known. She was the sort of person who believed rules were meant to be enforced, no matter the cost, even if it meant using intimidation. Tom wasn't alone in feeling the weight of Karen's crusade. Over the next few days, neighbors began to whisper. A few sympathetic ones approached him quietly, sharing stories of their own run-ins with Karen's heavy-handed rule. One afternoon, while Tom was walking his dog, Mrs. Jenkins from 2 houses down stopped him. "Tom, honey," she said softly, glancing around as if Karen's eyes might be watching. "You need to be careful. Karen's not just sending letters anymore. I heard she's been talking to the police, trying to get them involved. She's made it personal." Tom nodded grimly. "I'm not scared," he replied, though the pit in his stomach suggested otherwise. The atmosphere in the neighborhood was shifting. What once felt like a quiet, friendly community now buzzed with tension and suspicion. The split between Karen's loyal supporters and those who sympathized with Tom grew wider every day. In the midst of all this, Tom decided to take a stand. He wasn't going to let Karen bully him into paying fees he didn't owe. But he knew he had to be smart about it. Blind defiance wouldn't help. He needed proof. That evening, Tom sat down at his computer and began gathering every document he could find: past bills, HOA meeting minutes from the community website, emails, and even photos of the community areas that supposedly required costly improvements. Nothing matched the charges on his bill. He even contacted a local attorney recommended by a neighbor, hoping to get some legal advice. The attorney listened patiently, but warned Tom that HOA disputes often escalated quickly and could drag on for months or even years. Sometimes these boards play dirty, the lawyer said. They have a lot of power, and people like Karen use it like a weapon. You have to be ready. Tom thanked the attorney, but felt a fresh wave of determination. He wasn't going to back down. Then came the day that changed everything. Tom was sitting on his porch when he heard the faint wail of sirens down the street. Within minutes, 2 police cars rolled into Pine Ridge Estates and pulled up in front of his house. His heart raced as officers stepped out and approached. "Mr. Harris," one of them called. Tom nodded, standing up slowly. The officer continued. "We received a call reporting a dispute over unpaid fees, and it was suggested there might be some unlawful behavior. We're here to assess the situation." Tom blinked. Unlawful behavior? Over HOA fees? Before he could say anything, the officer added, "Do you mind if we come inside?" Tom hesitated but agreed. After all, He had nothing to hide. Inside, the officers asked questions, carefully taking notes. Tom explained the situation, the unfair bill, Karen's letters, and his refusal to pay. They listened but made it clear they were just there to investigate the complaint. Still, the whole experience felt surreal. Police involvement in a homeowner dispute. It was like living in a soap opera. After the officers left, Tom sat back down, feeling a mixture of relief and unease. The battle lines were drawn clearly now. Karen had escalated things beyond what he imagined. That night, as Tom stared at the ceiling, he thought about the future. The neighborhood had become a minefield, and every move felt like walking on thin ice. If you've ever faced an impossible HOA, hit subscribe and stay tuned. This story gets even crazier, and the fight is far from over. The morning sun barely peeked over the rooftops of Pine Ridge Estates when Tom's phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from his neighbor. "Lisa, Karen just called 911 on you. They're on their way." Tom's heart skipped a beat. He read the message twice, hoping it was a mistake. But deep down, he knew Karen's vendetta was far from over. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights cut through the calm suburban street. A pair of police cars screeched to a halt in front of Tom's house, and officers quickly spilled out, their faces serious and alert. Tom stepped onto his porch, hands raised slightly in a calm greeting. "Officers, what's going on?" One officer pulled out a notebook. "We received a call from a Karen Prescott regarding a dispute. She claims you are refusing to comply with HOA regulations and potentially causing a disturbance." Tom blinked in disbelief. "A disturbance? All I'm doing is refusing to pay a questionable bill." The officer nodded. "We're here to check it out. We need to speak with you inside." Tom stepped back and let them enter. Heart pounding. The situation felt surreal. Neighbors watching from their windows, whispers spreading down the street like wildfire. Inside, Tom calmly explained the entire situation, the unfair charges, the letters, the legal threats, and his refusal to pay what he believed was wrong. The officers listened, taking notes, but it was clear they were here because of Karen's call, not because of any wrongdoing on Tom's part. Still, Tom felt a growing sense of unease. Why would Karen escalate things so quickly? Was she hoping the police would intimidate him into paying? Or was there something else behind this? After a polite but tense conversation, the officers thanked Tom for his cooperation and assured him they would review the complaint, but couldn't make any arrests without evidence of a crime. As they left, Tom heard murmurs from neighbors gathered nearby, their eyes darting between Tom's house and Karen's. Word travels fast in Pine Ridge, and Karen's call to 911 had instantly become the talk of the community. Some saw Karen as a protector of order. Others saw her as a bully abusing her power. Tom's phone buzzed again. Another message from Lisa. "Karen's not done. She's already at the HOA office, talking to the board. They want you gone." The pressure was mounting. Tom felt like a man trapped in quicksand. Every step he took only pulled him deeper. That afternoon, he tried to reach out to the HOA board directly, but Karen had already painted the picture. Tom as the troublemaker, the non-compliant homeowner, threatening the peace of Pine Ridge Estates. The board members, hesitant and unsure, kept their distance. Karen's influence was strong, and no one wanted to cross her. Frustrated and isolated, Tom knew he had to take a different approach. He started documenting everything: the 911 call, conversations, emails, and any interaction with the HOA. He recorded phone calls with permission, saved all letters, and began compiling a timeline. Tom also reached out to a local community watchdog group specializing in HOA disputes. They offered advice and promised to keep an eye on the situation. But as Tom dug deeper, he noticed something troubling. Karen wasn't just focused on him. Other neighbors had quietly complained about her behavior but feared retaliation. One evening, Tom met with a few neighbors at the local diner. Over coffee, they shared stories of fines that came out of nowhere, threats of liens, and a pattern of intimidation. Tom felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he wasn't alone in this fight. Still, the question hung heavy in the air. How far would Karen go to win? And what would it cost Tom? The tension in Pine Ridge Estates was reaching a boiling point, and the next move could change everything. If you've ever dealt with an overbearing whore, or just love a story full of twists and turns, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. Things are about to get even more intense. The once friendly streets of Pine Ridge Estates had become a battlefield. What was once a neighborhood where neighbors waved hello now felt more like a powder keg waiting to explode. The 911 call from Karen had shattered any remaining calm. Tom was right in the center of the storm. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some neighbors whispered that Tom was a troublemaker, refusing to pay his dues and making life difficult for everyone. Others quietly admitted they sympathized with him, but few had the courage to speak out. It wasn't long before the subtle glances and hushed conversations morphed into outright tension. Neighbors stopped inviting Tom to barbecues. His mailbox, once full of friendly notes and holiday cards, sat empty. Karen, meanwhile, seemed to thrive in the chaos. Her sharp gaze swept across the streets as if daring anyone to challenge her authority. It was clear she was sending a message. Defy her, and you would be isolated. One afternoon, Tom bumped into Mike, a longtime resident known for his easygoing nature. Mike's face was grim as they exchanged greetings. "Tom," Mike said quietly, "I'm sorry, man. Things have gotten ugly." Karen's got the board wrapped around her finger. "People are scared to take sides." Tom nodded. "I get it. But this isn't just about me. It's about fairness. It's about standing up to abuse." Mike sighed. "I admire that. Just watch your back." That evening, Tom noticed a flyer taped to a lamppost near his house. It read, "Pine Ridge residents, protect our community values. Support HOA leadership. Say no to rule breakers." The flyer wasn't signed, but the message was clear. It was an attack on Tom, thinly veiled as a call for unity. Feeling the walls closing in, Tom began to record everything happening around him. He kept a journal of encounters, saved the flyer, and documented every conversation with HOA members and neighbors. His phone buzzed with messages from friends outside the neighborhood, encouraging him to keep fighting and offering resources to help. But the emotional toll was heavy. Every day felt like walking through a minefield. The neighbors he once trusted now looked at him with suspicion or outright hostility. Then came the message that shook him the most, a formal notice from the horde demanding he remove his backyard fence. According to Karen, it violated community guidelines and needed to come down within 10 days. Tom stared at the letter in disbelief. The fence was built years ago, approved back then, and no one had ever complained until now. It was clear Karen was intensifying her campaign. Tom felt his resolve hardening. This was no longer just about the bill or the fines. It was a war for his home, his dignity, and his right to live peacefully. Determined to fight back, Tom started reaching out to more neighbors quietly. He found others who were fed up with Karen's heavy hand, but afraid to speak openly. Together, they began gathering signatures for a petition to demand a fair review of HOA policies and leadership. Word of their efforts spread cautiously. But Karen caught wind of it quickly. The following HOA meeting was packed with tension. Karen's voice was sharp and unyielding as she dismissed the petition as baseless and disruptive. Tom stood among the crowd, heart pounding. It was clear the fight was far from over. As he left the meeting, a neighbor whispered, "Karen's not just fighting for power, she's fighting to keep her secrets." Tom's curiosity piqued. What secrets? And could they be the key to finally ending this nightmare? If you're captivated by Tom's fight and want to see how the story unfolds, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. The drama in Pine Ridge Estates is about to reach a whole new level. After the intense HOA meeting, Tom knew he needed more than just determination, he needed solid proof. The whispered hints about Karen's secrets gnawed at him. If Karen was hiding something, uncovering it could change everything. That evening, Tom began digging through public records and old community newsletters, looking for any inconsistencies or unusual activity linked to Karen or the HOA. It wasn't easy, these things were often buried beneath layers of paperwork, but he was relentless. Days turned into nights as he pieced together a troubling pattern. Several community improvement projects had been approved, but the money allocated for them never seemed to make it to actual work. Some vendors listed on invoices were hard to trace. Other contracts appeared to be awarded without proper bids. Tom realized that the $1,245 bill he'd been hit with might be just the tip of the iceberg. He also found out about past complaints filed against Karen for aggressive behavior toward residents. But somehow those complaints had been dismissed quietly. To get a clearer picture, Tom reached out to neighbors who might have witnessed or experienced something similar. Slowly, he gathered stories. One neighbor had mysteriously been fined for a minor landscaping violation the day after Karen personally stopped by their house. Another had a drainage issue ignored by the HOA for months. With their permission, Tom started collecting statements, turning anecdotes into documented complaints. But the bigger challenge was turning all this into evidence the HOA board and local authorities couldn't ignore. He contacted the attorney he had spoken with before. The lawyer advised him to organize the evidence carefully, dates, documents, photos, even audio recordings if possible. Tom took the advice seriously. He recorded phone calls with HOA representatives where they refused to clarify charges. He photographed neglected community areas while comparing them with the invoices Karen had approved. Meanwhile, Karen's behavior became more aggressive. One afternoon, she showed up unannounced at Tom's house, clipboard in hand, inspecting his property like an inspector on a mission. "You're in violation of community guidelines," she said sharply. "That fence must come down. You're creating an eyesore." Tom stood his ground. "That fence has been here for years, approved when I moved in. There is no violation." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Don't test me, Tom, you're running out of time." The visit felt like a warning and a challenge. Despite the pressure, Tom felt a spark of hope. He wasn't alone. Others in the neighborhood were quietly rallying behind him, ready to stand up. But just when things seemed to be turning, a call came that shook Tom's confidence. It was the HOA's attorney, demanding an immediate cease and desist from defaming the HOA and its leadership. Tom's heart pounded. The fight had escalated into a full-blown legal battle. That night, he sat at his desk, staring at the mountain of evidence he had gathered. It was more than just bills and fences now, it was a fight for transparency and justice. Tom Mater, silent, vowed he would see this through, no matter what Karen threw at him. And for everyone watching, if you've ever faced unfair treatment or felt powerless against a system, remember standing up matters. Hit that subscribe button and follow Tom's journey. You won't believe what happens next. The night of the big HOA meeting arrived, and the community center was packed to capacity. The air buzzed with anticipation. Some came to support Tom, others to stand with Karen, and many just wanted to witness the drama unfold. Tom felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This wasn't just about his fans or an unfair bill anymore. It was a battle for truth, fairness, and the soul of Pine Ridge Estates. Karen took the stage first, projecting confidence and control. Her voice was sharp as she outlined what she called the community's need for order and compliance. She painted Tom as a troublemaker, someone undermining the neighborhood harmony. When it was Tom's turn, he stepped up calmly but firmly. He began to lay out the evidence he had spent weeks gathering, detailed invoices that didn't match services, photos of neglected community areas, testimonies from neighbors who had suffered under Karen's reign, and even the letters and calls threatening him. The room grew silent. Some faces showed shock. Others looked skeptical. Karen's calm demeanor began to crack. "Are these accusations true?" a board member asked, glancing at Karen. Karen faltered, but quickly regained composure. "These are baseless attacks meant to destabilize our community," she snapped. "I have served this neighborhood for years, and will continue to do so." Tom pressed on. "The people deserve transparency. We deserve fair treatment. If the board ignores these issues, then who protects us?" Murmurs filled the room as tension mounted. Suddenly, a voice from the back spoke up. "I'm Sarah," said a woman standing. "I've lived here for 10 years. I was fined by Karen last year for trimming my hedges too short, even though the rules didn't say that. When I questioned her, I was threatened with liens on my house." More neighbors stood and shared stories, quiet suffering that Karen had hidden beneath her iron grip. Karen's face went pale. At that moment, Tom saw a shift in the room. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. The support Karen once held was slipping away. Before Karen could respond, Tom dropped the final bombshell. "And there's more," he said. "Documents I found show questionable contracts awarded by the HOA under Karen's watch, money unaccounted for, and dismissed complaints. This isn't about me. It's about all of us." Gasps echoed. Karen's voice was strained. "You're fabricating lies to ruin reputations." But the damage was done. The HOA president's carefully constructed image was crumbling, and the community was waking up. As the meeting ended, Karen stormed out, her usual confidence shattered. Tom stood among neighbors, some clapping quietly, others still unsure, but for the first time, he felt hope. But just when Tom thought the battle was nearing an end, he received an anonymous message late that night. "You don't know everything about Karen. Watch your back." The warning was chilling. If you want to see how this mystery unfolds and whether Tom can finally bring justice to Pine Ridge Estates, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. The next part will blow you away. The anonymous message haunted Tom's thoughts all night. Who was warning him, and what secrets about Karen had yet to surface? Determined to find out, Tom started digging deeper. This time beyond the horror records and neighborhood complaints. He contacted a local journalist friend, hoping to get help uncovering any hidden history. What they uncovered was shocking. Years before moving to Pine Ridge Estates, Karen Prescott had been involved in a scandal at a different community, a homeowners association several towns away. There, she was accused of embezzling funds, intimidating board members, and covering up her actions by threatening legal action against anyone who spoke out. Although the case was settled quietly, Karen had resigned abruptly and disappeared from that community's radar. Tom's journalist friend also found a trail of suspicious activity. Shell companies linked to vendors that had contracts with Karen's current HOA, strange financial transfers, and documents suggesting Karen's relatives were beneficiaries of some HOA projects. This was no ordinary power struggle. Karen had been using her position to enrich herself and maintain control, with little regard for the community she claimed to serve. Armed with this explosive information, Tom knew he had to tread carefully. He couldn't just expose Karen without proof that could hold up legally. He started gathering more documents, tracing money trails and corroborating stories from neighbors. Meanwhile, Karen sensed the tide turning against her. Her calls to intimidate Tom increased, and there were reports of her pressuring other neighbors to stay quiet or face consequences. One evening, Tom received a threatening voicemail. The voice was cold and clear: "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." But Tom refused to back down. He organized a small group of trusted neighbors and shared everything they had found, encouraging them to stand united. Together, they decided to hold an emergency HOA meeting, prepared to present the evidence and demand Karen's resignation. The day of the meeting arrived, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. As Tom stepped up to speak, he revealed the past scandal, the financial irregularities, and the pattern of intimidation. Gasps filled the room. Some faces turned pale. Karen, sitting at the front, looked cornered but still defiant. Then came the biggest shock. Karen's own sister stood up. "I'm tired of the lies," she said quietly. Karen has been hiding more than just HOA fees. There are things in her past she doesn't want you to know. Her words sparked murmurs and whispers. The sister handed Tom a file of letters and documents exposing further corruption and personal vendettas. The community was stunned. Karen's grip on Pine Ridge Estates was unraveling faster than anyone imagined. The board, unable to ignore the mounting evidence and the clear division in the neighborhood, called for a vote of no confidence. Karen left the room in silence, her power shattered. Tom watched as the neighborhood he loved began to heal. But he knew this wasn't just the end, it was a new beginning for everyone watching. If you thought this story was intense, wait until you see the resolution. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications to catch the final chapter in this unbelievable horror saga. The room was heavy with silence as Karen quietly packed her things. The vote of no confidence had passed overwhelmingly. After years of unchecked control, her reign at Pine Ridge Estates was finally over. Tom felt a rush of relief, but knew the real work was just beginning. With Karen gone, the HOA board appointed an interim president to one of the neighbors who had stood quietly alongside Tom throughout the ordeal. Their first priority: transparency and restoring trust. Tom was invited to join a new committee tasked with reviewing HOA financials and policies. Together, they promised to hold open meetings, publish clear reports, and ensure no one person could ever wield such unchecked power again. Yet, just as Tom started to breathe easier, an unexpected twist surfaced. One morning, Tom received a call from the local sheriff's department. They had opened an investigation into Karen's activities based on the evidence he and the neighbors had provided. But there was more. An anonymous tip had led them to discover a second home Karen owned hidden from the HOA records, where she had been storing expensive equipment and documents that pointed to a wider network of fraud involving other communities. The news spread fast. Karen wasn't just a local problem. She was part of a bigger scheme, and the authorities were ready to take action. Tom felt vindicated, but also humbled. What started as a fight over a suspicious bill had uncovered something far greater and far darker. In the weeks that followed, Pine Ridge Estates began healing. Neighbors who had drifted apart slowly came back together. The community center reopened with renewed energy, hosting events focused on unity and fairness. Tom's story even caught the attention of a local news station, shining a spotlight on how one homeowner's courage had sparked change. One afternoon, as Tom mowed his lawn, a neighbor walked over with a smile. "Thanks for standing up for all of us, Tom. You reminded us we have power when we unite." Tom smiled back, feeling a sense of peace. It hadn't been easy, but it was worth it. And just when he thought the saga was truly over, a surprise arrived in the mail. A letter from Karen. Inside, no threats, no harsh words. Just a brief note. "You won this round, Tom. But remember, power is never truly gone. Stay vigilant." Tom chuckled and tucked the letter away. Some battles never really end. But for now, Pine Ridge Estates was free. If you've enjoyed this incredible journey, don't forget to subscribe and share this story with friends who might need a little courage themselves. Thanks for watching, and remember, standing up for what's right can change everything.